Alright, welcome back, Pokemon fans. We are in round 6 of the Knoxville Pokemon Regional Championships. This match, we are bringing you Kyle Livinghouse versus Keith Boone. Both players are currently 5-0, so the winner of this match is going to be guaranteed to be playing tomorrow in Top Cut. We've got, take a look at their teams. On your screen, you can already see Kyle's team. So we're looking at Kyle using a team of Kangaskhan, Groudon, Tornadus, Incineroar, Xerneas, and Amoonguss. And then a really similar team on the other side there. We're going to be seeing Keith using a team of Kangaskhan, Groudon, Xerneas, Tornadus, Mawile, and Como-O. So
yeah, so really
a lot of similar Pokemon here. Which makes this matchup tough because you know you both have the same tools. You know, you have to just outplay your opponent rather than hit them with a trick up your sleeve.
Right, and we see those two differences on the bottom row. There's teams there: Incineroar and Amoonguss for Kyle, and Kyle's old version of the team on the other side with Mawile and Como-O. Mawile and Como-O, not exactly the best Pokemon in this matchup, so from Keith, you're probably going to be expecting those top four to come to the game. However, you're talking about the differences. The Incineroar and Amoonguss differences can play a really interesting role in this matchup.
For sure.
Both provide a lot of different utility options to kind of enable the restricteds, and those are two options that Keith doesn't have, so I feel like Kyle's got a deeper bag of tricks this game than Keith will.
I mean, yeah, we're going to have to see, because Keith could potentially bring that Como if he can find a way to, dance around the Xerneas and the Tornadus, but that's not a small ask, that's a pretty big, barrier to bring this bad boy. So we're going to see Kyle leading with a fairly safe lead of Amoonguss and Xerneas. Meanwhile, Keith is just going, with a lead we've seen several times today of Tornadus and Kangaskhan.
Yeah, just tried and true, right? It's
exactly.
Something where it's just like you're not sure how to play it. Kang Torn.
Yeah,
it's just really safe option. A lot of
it gives
ways
you a
can
lot
go.
of options for a lot of different things to do. And it's safe. It's what players are comfortable with, and we've heard a lot of our players in these interviews after their match that you should stick with something you're comfortable with that you know how to use and everything else.
Right, so really interesting how this is going to go out. We actually see Amoonguss switch out here for the Incineroar. So we see the two differences from Kyle hitting the field right away. Really just more of a dedicated Xerneas approach to the game right now from what it looks like.
Exactly. It definitely looks like Kyle is like, you know what, my route to winning this game is to get my Xerneas set up before Keith sets his Xerneas up, and just out-damage everything.
Right. So Kangaskhan is Mega Evolve, not really.
Not surprising.
Yeah, not
there was
surprising.
No reason for it not to. If it was carrying Scrappy or Inner Focus, there were neither Ghost types nor Fake Out users on the field. And we actually see Keith going straight for the Z move on turn 1. I imagine this is the Sky Strike and not the Z Tailwind.
Right.
But
it is that Supersonic Sky Strike, but interesting that is the play that he goes for here. Usually in game 1, that Amoonguss item is something you typically want to find out, and on these types of teams, it's usually Focus Sash.
Right.
So seeing that just get fired off with no fear, a really bold play from Keith in this situation, but it pays off. That chip damage onto Incineroar is really important.
For sure,
for the
dealing
lead.
a little bit more than half of Incineroar's HP there really puts it in range, especially if this Kangaskhan is carrying a fighting move, it could be in range to go down to that. But, obviously we'll have to see. So now we see the Fake Out into Tornadus. I do like that. Prevent any sort of taunt. And Kyle actually not setting up, just going for the Moonblast into the Tornadus slot.
I think that's going to be big, especially right here, seeing that Roar. We talked earlier about we saw a low-kick Kangaskhan.
Right.
We talked about how Roar is potentially sometimes that last move on Kangaskhan. So Kyle not really wanting to risk it there, knowing that, okay, this Kangaskhan going to have Roar, Tornadus often carries Fake Out, not Fake Out, Taunt, which would stop the Geomancy. So realizing, okay, my odds of getting this
I can't
off,
get the Geomancy up,
are really low.
So let's get some damage instead.
Right, let me get the damage off. Gets good chip damage on Tornadus there. Maybe put some potential KO for a U-turn plus Clear Smog, or just any move from any of the restrictions at this point. But now, this Amoonguss really isn't in a spot it probably wants to be in, especially not with a restricted next to it. Incineroar not really the partner that it wants most of the time. But
right, so we do see Groudon coming in here. So the big thing here, Tornadus can't just fire off a Hurricane willy-nilly into that Amoonguss. With the sun up, it's only going to be 50% accurate. And I mean, if you like playing those dice games, go for it.
Right.
Recommend against, personally. Like,
we do see that the Amoonguss will protect you though, so good play on Kyle's side, knowing that he doesn't want to take a taunt here, which is what Tornadus goes for. Opening the door for Incineroar to potentially KO with the Flare Blitz. We do see U-turn.
Yeah, we see the U-turn out here, and I really don't mind that play. Going for, you know, a little bit of chip on the Kangaskhan, put it in range for a +2 Moonblast, potentially, if you get that option. And Tailwind still isn't up, you know. A big tenet for this team is getting Tailwind up.
Right, and now, really still not a great spot for Kyle. Not having a taunt on Amoonguss right now is good. However, taunt can just get fired off right here anyway, and Groudon on these types of teams typically is special, and this Eruption is going to hurt a lot.
Right. Eruption is going to deal a ton of damage to both Pokemon here. You know, like you Rage Powder away a taunt, try to get up a boost, you're still taking damage. You know, or potentially letting your opponent set a Tailwind, which
Right.
Kyle doesn't want to let that happen, because, you know, with Tailwind active, he's losing a lot. So we see no Rage Powder here and no taunt, as Xerneas just goes for the Moonblast here into the Groudon slot. So that's going to weaken the damage from an Eruption. No special attack drop, though, which I'm sure Kyle would have loved to have seen, as Amoonguss survives the Eruption and fires off a Spore
into Groudon. So yeah, really big play there from Kyle. Very risky play.
It definitely was. That could have been punished a lot, you
Right.
know. But
especially if there's a taunt coming out from Tornadus. So maybe, I feel like Keith kind of overreached there. That's a situation where, yeah, getting the Tailwind up is nice, but if Xerneas wants to take the turn to Geomancy, that's fine. I would just let it set up the Geomancy next turn, because especially if you're Eruptioning. If you taunt it on Amoonguss Mental Herb, fine. Because then
Exactly.
Eruption will get the one-hit KO. I think...
yeah, so
Taunt
this
there
actually
probably
puts
would've been
Kyle in a
preferable.
really good position, right?
Right.
As Icy Wind is shown from this Tornadus, which is going to ignore that Rage Powder, pick up the KO there, and allow him to get a speed drop on the Xerneas. You know, so that's going to help maintain the speed advantage, you know, with Tailwind up and Xerneas, you know, boosted. It's still going to be slower rather than, you know, kind of matching Tailwind.
Right. But now we see that Geomancy come out from Xerneas here. Really great, like good spot to get it set up. Like Groudon's asleep, it's been weakened. Eruption really not being a huge threat anymore, and having a fake out Pokemon in the back
Exactly.
gives you some luxury to come in and say fake out either one of these Pokemon to go for like a Dazzling Gleam. So Kyle made that bold call a few turns ago, really starting to show dividends now.
For sure. So Kyle bringing in his Kangaskhan, revealing his 4th Pokemon here. Kangaskhan obviously gonna have that fake out pressure. The question here is, do you want to take a KO this turn, or do you want to like try and get towards the end of Tailwind before doing that?
Right. This is a good point. Like we saw Joseph Ugarte earlier capitalizing off not taking KOs. However, you got your Xerneas boosted right now. I think you really just want to start pressing that go button.
Right.
You don't want to give Keith too many opportunities to potentially like slow down your Xerneas, and then suddenly all that effort you took in the mid game to get this Xerneas into the position it is right now
Is
just
now
been
wasted. So we do see no fake out here again, which is interesting. Oh, just kidding.
Groudon went for Protect.
It went for a Protect in case it woke up. As the fake out goes into Groudon, rather than into the Tornadus, as Icy Wind comes out. So now this Xerneas is back to base speed.
Right, so now, really big Icy Wind there. Kangaskhan can now come back in for Keith and knock it out with a double edge. More importantly, this Kangaskhan also has a speed drop on it, so this Groudon can potentially outspeed the Kangaskhan, does hang on with that Dazzling Gleam, and could go for something like Earth Power, maybe an Overheat.
Right, get
into
some
Kang.
damage in.
Right, so really good play there from Keith, just setting that speed control up, and that boost hasn't really been negated. because of course Xerneas is still hitting like a truck. However,
Right, it's
much more manageable now with that speed boost being dropped. And Kangaskhan's in a great position to start picking up some KOs. We saw that Incineroar's at much lower health thanks to the earlier Supersonic Sky Strike. So Kangaskhan, normally not the real offensive threat on this team, is really starting to look like it now with how Keith was able to manage that board.
It's in a position to start dealing some damage.
Right. So, and especially no fake out live. Keith can try and maybe even call an Incineroar switch in here. Maybe like double targeting that slot if he wants to try and get a little bit gutsy.
For sure.
But yeah, those really games starting to be just flip back and forth, and that's kind of one of the great things about these mirrors is they're so similar, and each like unique play that the player makes can turn the game in such a wide variety. Right. And we do see Incineroar does come back in here, so we see Xerneas does protect, so wanted to get that fake out.
Make sure it avoids the fake out there. As Kangaskhan goes straight for the double edge into the Xerneas, as Groudon takes another sleep turn. So that turn actually pays off really well for Kyle, right? Like, he gets his Incineroar on the field, gets an Intimidate off to the Kangaskhan, and takes no damage, and now has Fake Out active.
Right.
And as well as letting Tailwind in.
Right, and even then, I don't think it's necessarily a bad thing if the Groudon wakes up and KOs Incineroar, because Kangaskhan comes back in
and has Fake Out live again as well.
Yeah,
so it was sort of a...
Either way, he's just ensuring that his Xerneas is able to get off a hit, which is really what he needs, considering how far back he got put earlier with the Icy Winds from the Tornadus. And we see the Dazzling going to come out here. Not sure if it's going to be enough to pick up the KO on Kangaskhan. And it is not.
So not quite enough for the KO on Kangaskhan. Does pick up the KO into that Groudon, though.
Leaves us in a little tricky spot here. The Xerneas, have to imagine that's the last Pokemon here for Keith.
Right.
Those Icy ones from earlier. Actually,
it's a combo. That actually changes things a lot.
That changes a lot. Como and with no Z move. We saw Tornadus go for it.
Already went for the Z move, so there is no boosting on this Como.
So Keith's going to have to make a call here. Really rough spot. If it was that Xerneas, he would have been in a great position. He could have just double-edged the Xerneas and Geomancy. However, with that Como being the last Pokemon, Xerneas is a much bigger threat now than it was before.
It looks like Keith's Kangaskhan is actually faster than Kyle's Xerneas, though, because it's at neutral speed rather than boosted. So I imagine Double Edge here will be enough to pick up the KO.
You have to assume so. However, we see Bite actually go off onto Incineroar,
right.
So fishing for some flinches here. Interested to see what Como is going for,
Oh, okay.
So really just hoping, just knowing that he can't give the Incineroar switch,
and
he's
Incineroar
rewarded
gets the
with the Bite flinch. Honestly, great play by Keith.
Yeah,
like, knowing that is his play to win, knowing, okay, I can't let Fake Out come back in.
Exactly.
Knowing the Xerneas has to protect itself, just going all in on that Bite flinch and getting it. Great play. But we see a double
Xerneas
protect
gets the double protect.
Xerneas.
That's actually going to be huge as Double Edge goes into the Xerneas slot. And Focus Blast also into the Xerneas slot.
But U-turn going into that
Kangaskhan slot. Actually, I really like that double into the Xerneas slot. Keith obviously got unlucky with that double protect, but it's like Double Edge should pick up the KO. And if I add Focus Blast for good measure, in case you try to switch. So Kangaskhan is on the field here. Fake Out is considerably less threatening, considering Como is behind a.
However, it is less threatening, but Kangaskhan and Xerneas are both faster than Como. We can just see a simple double edge in Moonblast there.
Break the substitute, hit the Moonblast, that quad super effective. And so Keith's seeing that and goes for it. RNG kind of on both sides, right? Like if he didn't get the Bite flinch onto Incineroar, we're in a different game anyways. So it just sort of happens. Good play on both sides, though.
It's just a case of RNG giveth and RNG taketh away. Keith able to make a lot out of a game that we thought was lost when we saw that Como coming to
right.
Like it's a change
he gave himself the chance to get back in the game.
Yes, he relied on a Bite flinch in got it, but double protect is unfortunate.
Right, and then, you know, lost to a double flinch. Or, excuse me, a double protect.
But I don't think we're probably going to be seeing the Como this game.
I mean,
like we're saying, if it was that Xerneas, Keith is in a great spot.
Right.
So, but overall, I really liked how he played that game. He was able to get his Groudon out under Tailwind. And while we didn't see we saw the early roar from Kangaskhan, so he's shown that he was willing to deal with the Xerneas in that regard, but was still able to deal with it with the Icy Wind and set him up for after the Tailwind, which is something that we really haven't seen from a lot of people running this today. It's either they've gotten their damage out in Tailwind or they just haven't won the game at all. Keith able to keep that long game in mind and was able to
so having that Icy Wind in order to punish, you know, some of that slower play style stuff where you're just trying to stall out Tailwind. You can't stall out the Icy Wind. As long as the Pokemon stays on the field, it's still affected by it.
Right. And if I'm Kyle, we kind of saw the strength of his two individual Pokemon there. Amoonguss and Incineroar did a lot of work.
They sure did.
Just allowing that Xerneas to just run rampant there in the mid-game. While it didn't start off the greatest, they were able to just be annoying enough to Keith's side until it was finally time for Xerneas and Kangaskhan to come in and do their job. Once again, Keith sticking with that trusty lead of Kangaskhan and Tornadus. We see Kyle adjusting here with his own Tornadus and Incineroar.
Yeah, so I like seeing Keith stick with what he had, because, you know, I think he kind of sees that, oh, if I had Xerneas instead of Como in the back, I just had to play that game exactly the same, and I was in a good place.
Right.
You know, so sticking with what he's got, not a bad option. So we do see that that Tornadus switching out for Groudon. Goodness, there's too many Pokemon in my head right now.
Yeah, so actually a really interesting switch in here. This Tornadus on Kyle's side has to be perfectly okay with seeing that switch in. On this turn 1, you ran the risk of maybe like a fake out, Kangaskhan faking out the Incineroar. We see like Supersonic Sky Strike his own Tornadus, then going down suddenly you lose your speed control. However, Tornadus on Kyle's side is looking much better now. Free to go for its own Supersonic Sky Strike potentially, or just set up a Tailwind if it wants.
Alright, so we do see the fake out into Tornadus, and the fake out into what was the Tornadus slot. So mostly a dead turn. Obviously Keith getting repositioned, bringing his Groudon onto the field.
Right, but I definitely think that if that's how that first turn plays, that's definitely got to be in favor of Kyle. This Tornadus is in a much better position.
Right, because it can, you know, now it's in a better position to get its Tailwind up. You know, Kyle's kind of playing that game where he's like, I just want to get Tailwind up and then lose a Pokemon so I can come in and, you know, start doing some work.
Right.
Like, so the double edge into Incineroar there deals a good chunk of damage considering the Kangaskhan had been intimidated previously.
Yeah, we see that this Incineroar is going to go down to that Earth Pounder, so good call by Keith. Not protecting in front of that Tornadus like we might have expected it to. However, like you were saying, kind of falling into that Kang torn trap.
Exactly.
So well, it's great that you removed the Incineroar. If this is a Groudon coming out for Kyle, which it is, where's the Eruption?
Yeah.
Supersonic Sky Strike switch in.
And so obviously Keith has some options here. He might have to give up some Pokemon to get in a position to do it. You know, because he does have his Tornadus, he can set up a Tailwind to match, but he's going to be taking some damage on those turns while he tries to get in that position.
Exactly. So this is a much rougher spot. Keith's probably not expecting to see the Groudon in this game after
not seeing it previously.
So playing that game as assuming, okay, it's probably going to be the same two Pokemon like the Xerneas and Amoonguss.
For sure.
I'm fine making this play. However, such is not the case. And now, kind of falling into that lull of the Game 1 information, Kyle just really flipping the switch and going completely different and starting to run with the offensive mode that this team is really known for.
Yeah, so we do see the Supersonic Sky Strike coming out into the Groudon's Protect. So that's going to deal reduced damage, but it does put it in range for an Earth Power later.
Right.
You know, at the very least, as this Eruption does come out, that's going to deal a lot to this Kangaskhan.
Kangaskhan likely going to go down. As bulky as Kangaskhan is, it's still Groudon.
It
still hits really hard.
This crazy, powerful, you know, stab boosted, sun boosted move.
Right.
So, now it's tough. Like, what does Keith bring in here? Tornadus, sure, you can set a Tailwind. What's it gonna cost you?
I think if you're Keith here, you're really hoping for. We saw a double protect cost him game 1. I think he really needs a double protect here in game 2.
Because
we're probably gonna have to see if he wants any chance of getting back into this game. He's gonna need to protect his Groudon, or more likely the incoming Earth Power from Kyle's Groudon. And he's probably gonna have to Z Tailwind here with his Tornadus because Tornadus on Kyle's side is faster.
Can't rely on winning a speed tie on the taunt.
Well, even then, taunt is faster on Kyle's side because of the Tailwind.
Right.
So he's gonna have to Z Tailwind if he wants to get that up. So really rough spot. I actually just see him go for regular Tailwind.
Just going straight for the Tailwind. So Kyle, potentially could have punished, but maybe he's in a position where with the Icy Winds, he thinks he can kind of, do the same thing that Keith was setting him up for in the last game.
Right. Icy Wind is big here. Just getting more chip damage off onto that Groudon for later is also important. We actually do see Eruption. So, big read here. That Icy Wind coming much into play, realizing that, okay, we see Groudon hang on with around one hit point.
That did so much damage to that
Earth
Groudon.
Power coming down.
As Earth Power comes in,
Easy
picks
KO.
up the KO on Kyle's Groudon. So now we're in a 2v2 situation.
Right. And what's important about that is Kyle just not really risking the double protect, because if he went for the Earth Power and Taunt, that play started to really hard punish. Icy Wind coming out means that another Icy Wind will now just KO the Groudon, or Xerneas can KO with the Dazzling Gleam. And Kyle is free to just taunt onto Keith Xerneas. So really rough spot here for Keith. Big survive, however, still got a lot of work to do if he wants to win this.
So like Groudon not getting KO'd there helps Keith out, obviously, because it gives him something to deal some damage with. But it's still going to be an uphill battle for him to come back from that position.
Right. You got to assume that Kyle's Xerneas here is probably going to be wanting to go for that Geomancy here just to kind of solidify his win.
Exactly, especially since we've seen this Groudon is, the special variant that's been popular lately. Getting, and since Eruption will be a very neutered attack, it's going to have to rely on either like a flamethrower or overheat.
But you never know. Leaving Groudon alone, of course, can always be risky. We do see Icy Wind here.
Yeah. So I like seeing this Icy Wind here because it's going to pick up the KO on Groudon, get some speed control on the Xerneas. Because I kind of feel like the threat of Taunt is enough to prevent the Geomancy. But we'll see if Keith kind of saw that coming and went for the Geo anyways. That could ultimately swing this game a little bit, depending on what it is Keith goes for.
I also think Icy Wind there actually covers for what's going to happen here soon. Kyle's Tailwind is about to run out.
Exactly.
So, reset your own Tailwind after this, and then your Xerneas is faster, just giving him a much better position to try and win this. Gonna be really interesting to see how this goes down and if there's any RNG involved, but Kyle really just doing his best to just solidify his spot, trying to go forward with the
For sure. And there's definitely, there's a lot of RNG that can happen here. There's critical hits, there's Moonblast, special attack drops. This Tornadus will probably go down to a Dazzling Gleam. A lot of them have been trained, to survive one boosted Dazzling Gleam, but after taking some chip, not likely. But at the very least, it can get a Tailwind up.
Right. We actually don't even see a Protect from Kyle on this, which is kind of interesting. Opening up a critical hit chance for Keith.
Yeah, so it does open up the critical hit chance here.
The special attack drop. That's big.
Yeah, that is going to be really important, getting that special attack drop, as Kyle's Moonblast connects, but deals significantly less damage due to that special attack drop. However, Kyle does still have, he can hit those blind hurricanes as a potential option here.
And creates a little bit of a mind game here. Is Kyle going to protect his Xerneas here just on Keith's last turn of Tailwind? Is Keith going to call that? We do see it is a protect, so if Keith went for a Moonblast here, which he does, so not wanting to risk getting Moonblasted by the opposing Xerneas. We see that Hurricane.
Yeah, so we do see the Hurricane connect there. And that's a little bit of chip damage and a confusion, both of which are going to be, if this Xerneas hits itself in confusion, that's really going to swing things in Kyle's favor. You know,
Right.
there's still so much that could not happen. So no protects here, as the Moonblast does connect. Leaves it
Tornadoes
with,
does hit another Hurricane, and it does KO.
and the second Hurricane is enough to pick up the KO. And so there you have it. Kyle Livinghouse is going to be our first player who is qualified for Top Cut to be playing tomorrow.
Yeah, great. Really well played there by Kyle. Just showing his skill piloting this team as a whole. He's been running it all Ultra Series for the most part. A lot of plays there that didn't seem apparent to us at the time, like the icy ones coming around.
For sure.
Just some of the things. That's just skill that comes with piloting this team for so long. He's so polished at playing this team, and that really shows why he's probably one of the best players in the world and North America.
Yeah, he's definitely, been dominating, this season, playing really well.
Right.
And, right there you see exactly why.
That
Anyways.
was also really well played by Keith, on the other hand, though. Like, you see the team is in team preview, and you think, oh, this is a much more favorable situation for Kyle, given the Amoonguss and the Incineroar. However, Keith was able to play around that pretty well. We saw the double protect in game 1, and maybe like a couple of Hurricane misses away from winning in that game.
Exactly,
Still made some great plays.
Definitely
overall.
hanging in there, keeping up and making the right plays. Just sometimes the RNG is just not in your favor.
Right.
That's part of the game.
And at 5-1, still has a chance to cut.
Exactly.
So still has the next
One
round.
more win, and
Right.
maybe we're seeing him tomorrow as well.
And that's not a loss I'd really be too hung up on. You're playing probably one of the best players of the archetype in the world,
Definitely.
and you still played well. Like, that's nothing to hang your hat on. So hopefully he's able to keep his head up and win the next round, and we see him tomorrow in Top Cut as well. But we will be back here in a few moments with Kyle Livinghouse for your round 6 winners interview.
All right, ladies and gentlemen, I'm joined at the desk by Kyle Livinghouse, our first player to qualify for Top Cut to be played tomorrow. How are you feeling right now?
Very relieved because I came in with literally zero sleep because we got in at 5 a.m. So I'm glad to be alive.
Yeah, that's always good, and it's great to see that you're bouncing back after that and having a great run. So kind of walk me through this, right? Like when you're sitting down in team preview and you see the team that you literally just used at NAIC, what are you thinking? Like, because you probably know this team better than Keith does, right?
Yeah, I used this team at 2 regionals and NAIC, so like it was like 2 months worth of time. I gave it to him. We're pretty decent friends, so it was kind of tragic playing him, but hey, it was at a good spot, I guess, in the tournament.
Yeah, if there's a time to play your best friend, when you're only 1 win away from qualifying for Top Cut, that's not a bad time to do it. So when we were watching Game 1, when that Como comes out at the end, we weren't trying to like write off the game, but it kind of felt sealed. When did you feel like that game was wrapped up and you were good to go and start prepping for game 2?
So I originally thought that I had to avoid a focus blast, but then I forgot that I had the plus special defense on the Zern. So I was like, okay, all I have to do is U-turn here. And then I saw the bite, and I was like, uh-oh, and I needed to get the double, but it ended up working out. If he had Groudon, though, I had no shot, or Xerneas, per se. I would have had nothing for it, but Como was a surprise.
All right. So then another thing we noticed, we've seen all day these Kangaskhan Tornadus leads. It's a safe, gives you a lot of options, kind of lets you figure out the matchup. So we saw you switch to the Kang Torn lead in game 2. Why did you make that switch? What were you? I mean, it worked out, right? But what was kind of your thought process in making that change?
Well, yeah, I led Instant Torn, which
well,
is slightly
now I'm-
different, but it helps in the mirror because you get the Intimidate down and you have the U-turn pressure the following turn, so it gives you an immediate answer. But it's the same principle. You have the Fake Out, you have the Tailwind, you have a lot of options, and U-turn is just a different option that you get instead of the scrappy Fake Out.
Alrighty. So that's about all we have. Once again, congratulations. Is there anything you want to say to our viewers or your mom or anybody before you head out?
Well, shout outs to my mom, I guess, because she's pretty great. She's probably not watching this because I didn't tell her because my phone's dead, but she's pretty great for letting me come here. I also want to shout out, my boy Joseph for, deciding the road trip here at literally we left Virginia at 1 a.m. and we had quite the adventure. So I thank him very much for coming along with me. I know he's also 5-0 into the previous round.
Well,
so
fortunately, your Pokemon planning is a little bit better than your road trip planning. So
Indeed.
you seem to be doing well there.